Hey y'all, welcome to Team AC with Aaliyah Crawford. Today I am having a conversation with one of my very, very best friends. We've been friends for over 30 years. She is a wonderful mother, an amazing entrepreneur, a real estate broker, real estate agent, a general contractor, a Renaissance woman, and an expat. And so please join me in welcoming my girl, my heart, Christy Peters, also known as Christy Goes Global, and Christy in Coimbra. Boa tarde.
Oh, it's hard, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I was so excited about this conversation.
Thank you for taking time out because it's 5 hours ahead where you are. And so, there's a time difference. We had to, make sure our schedules were good for this, but I'm glad we could make it happen. So tell us where you are in the world. You're originally, you were born and raised in the United States, as was
Yes.
I, but tell us where you are now. Where
Yes, so I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised in New Jersey, but today I live in Coimbra, Portugal. So Coimbra is halfway between Lisbon, which everybody knows, many people know, and Porto. So Porto's in the north, Lisbon's in the south, and I am like almost dead in the middle.
so what I think this is something that's going on right now in the United States. At this particular time, a lot of people are thinking about moving elsewhere, moving
Yeah.
away from their homes. And there's a large expat community out, in other places outside of the United States. So what led you to move out of the US and to pick Portugal? I think a lot of
Uh,
people would be
yeah,
interested to know that.
Yeah, it's a very layered response, I think. I think I was telling you earlier, my mother is the one who brought into my remembrance that when my child was in preschool, I originally told her I wanted to move abroad, and I told her that I would wait until my child was a little bit older because I'm an only child, my mother's an only child, my daughter's an only child, and as her grandmother, she was like, "Oh no, you're gonna take my new grandbaby, across the seas." And so that was 20 plus years ago when I said that to her. And then I would say maybe about 10 years ago, it came back very strongly that I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. And so my husband at the time and I and my daughter, my stepdaughter, we started traveling very aggressively. And so by the time I got to Portugal in 2020, this was probably my 12th or 13th country of having visited. And up until arriving in Portugal, I thought Amsterdam would be my new home. I love that. I still do love the Netherlands. And it really spoke to me. But once I got to Portugal, it felt spiritual. I felt immediately at home. And it was the most, and I'm going to be very candid in this conversation, it was the most Black people I've ever seen in all my travels to Europe. And so we run the diaspora here. I mean, there's people from Mozambique, we have Angolans, Cape Verdeans, African Americans. I felt like I could see myself in my daily life reflected. And that was immensely important to me, as well as the proximity to the continent of Africa was very important to me. And so that's how I ended up here. 2020, I came, was here during the pandemic when the whole world actually shut down.
Mhm.
Went back to the States in March of 2020 and immediately started packing. And then I kept coming back and forth for the next 2.5 years, and then made the full-time move in early 2023. So I'm a little bit about 2.5 years in at
Mhm.
this point.
So, what has your experience been like? I know you mentioned it's like a lot of, it's very diverse in Portugal, and you're saying there's people from, the African, all over the African diaspora. But what has
Yes.
your experience been there as an American and as an African American?
I again, everybody's experience is their own, but I can say I have felt warmly embraced by the Portuguese from day one. I felt warmly embraced by the African American community that was already here and growing. I think that the people I formed relationships with over the 3 prior years to moving were very key in me having a soft landing here. So I already had Portuguese, like native born Portuguese friends who were very intentional about prepping me for moving here. So one of
Hmm.
my friends, he's an architect born in Porto, and he's like, you must learn the language. So he was having Portuguese lessons with me. He's an architect, but he sent me a whole textbook and was like teaching me Portuguese every Wednesday for an hour via Zoom, and then the African American community, the people who had already moved here and had already done all the things that I was having to do of my visa application and finding a place were extremely vital to me having a pretty relatively easy move here.
So it hasn't been, would you say it's been a hard or easy or adjustment? Like, how has that been?
I think I'm very blessed, but I think that's also, thanks to my ancestors, I have a very blessed, I believe, experience of moving here, from finding my home, a beautiful home very easily. That's not everybody's experience. Um, from doing my visa myself. Like sometimes people pay immigration attorneys to do that because
Mhm.
of people I knew and paying attention and keeping a notebook for the
Mhm.
past couple of years before I actually moved. I did my visa for myself successfully. I did my husband at the time, our visas successfully. His mother, my former mother-in-law, I did her visa and we all got approved. And so for me, it's been a pretty seamless experience. But then again, I have been visiting. I've been intentional. I've taken notes. I did much research. And so it's not something you do if you take it lightly. No one leaves the country of their birth, I don't think, lightly. That's
And
any
also,
immigrant.
right. And also, you were already a global traveler. You had been to many countries outside of the US already. So you were an experienced traveler.
True. Very true.
Yeah. So, what is racism an issue there, or is it an issue, as much of an issue as it is in the US? What's your take on that?
No, I don't think it's as much of an issue as it is in the US. And again, for people watching this, everybody's going to have their own experience. I think it's a very nuanced, layered conversation
Right.
because, like many Black people like to say that I encounter, they're like, oh, you live in Europe. That's where, slavery started. Da, 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 da. The Portuguese were started the transatlantic slave trade. Yes, as many countries participated in the transatlantic slave trade. You are absolutely right. The difference is, um, I say this all the time with the Netherlands, with England, with Portugal, with Spain, they were practicing slavery uh, prolifically abroad. So it wasn't as much as how the United States, we were kidnapped and brought by the millions into the States. They didn't have that same experience of having to be so violent with you on their home shore as there was great violence, of course. I mean, you got King Leopold from Belgium, right? There was great violence, the Congo and everywhere else, the former colonies, Mozambique, but not on their home shore. So I don't think that cell memory is as deep as it is in the States, so that they're not actively looking for ways to harm you. It might be a sense of superiority because they have a great pride in their exploration past, their discoveries, but not deep hatred like I want to hang you, I want to shoot you, none of that. And I have never personally experienced any of that. I have my immediate neighbors are all Portuguese. When I tell you I come home to a gift probably weekly, from fresh oranges from somebody's tree or figs or cake or anything, they look out for me. My dog is aging and he's very big and I was having difficulty. So my neighbor Mariana says, I sent Gonsalvo, her son. He's going to help you. And I'm like, I'm fine. I am perfectly fine. So I feel very loved and cared for here. I know the Afro-Portuguese experience is different. People who are from the former colonies, and also, which interestingly enough, doesn't have to do with color so much, but xenophobia. I know Brazilians also feel discriminated against here. And I can't speak to that because I'm not that. I feel like that's a common story in many places, specifically in Europe, where African people who are clearly, because of their accent or the perception of how they look as Africans, are treated differently than African Americans. So your African American presence comes with American money a lot of times, and so that buys you and affords you different treatment. It's a question of economics more than race. And I would say, especially here, it's not so much that even I don't think I follow SOS for Move because I try to be very aware. I'm not here as a tourist. I'm here to live and to
Mhm.
assimilate, to learn. And I'm here to learn from my Afro-Portuguese brothers and sisters as well. And so, from what I can tell, it's not so much of violence necessarily. They've had, I think there was a police shooting of a 16-year-old in Lisbon, maybe 15, almost 20 years ago. And think about us as African Americans, me having to think about when this shooting of this person happened
Right,
versus what happens in the States almost daily. And
right.
so although it's still atrocious and still not acceptable, the proliferation and the depth, I think, of violence is hands down not at all comparable. I feel very
Yeah.
comfortable and I feel very safe here.
Yeah, and when I visited Portugal, I didn't see my race as an issue. I don't know that if that, I didn't feel like that's what people looked at maybe first. And even in my, and I haven't traveled as extensively as you, but even
You
in
do
my
well.
travels elsewhere, and I do understand that there is a certain luxury afforded to people from the United States.
Mhm.
And so that also applies to African Americans, and sometimes people African Americans may be treated differently than um people of African descent who are native to those lands, or people who are visiting from Africa. um
Mhm.
when they hear your accent or you see your
Yes.
style of clothing, and they understand that you're American. But along that, also I feel that people really globally, at least in the places I visited, they really love African Americans and appreciate African Americans, and they do express that. I've had those conversations with people as well.
It's crazy, Aaliyah, because the things you hear from people who don't travel, pretty much. Again, I'm gonna be very candid. Folks who don't even have a passport, they be the first ones to tell you how everybody hates us. When that has not been my experience. I have been to, I think I'm at 13, maybe 14 countries at this point, and multiple times. I haven't had that experience. And I mean, but things are also subjective, right? It could be because of how I present myself. It could be because I actually make an effort to learn the language of wherever I'm going. I'm not by any means fluent in multiple languages, but I know enough and I learn enough to be a little bit dangerous when I go to every place. And so I
I
think I think it's
was
a
thinking about my
respect.
little I was thinking about my little bit of Portuguese that I learned last summer when I was there, and how I had to get in my Discopa bag. Remember that guy?
Right. But you saw how people smiled when you made an effort, even when you didn't have it quite right. People were very patient, right? People are
Except
patient.
that man that was mad that he bumped into me. And I said, "Disculpa."
But that's because y'all were being fun. You were funny. That's different. That's universal, girl. But yeah, I think it depends on how you respectfully approach a culture. Um, a posture of I understand I'm visiting. I'm here to partake in what the beauty of your place is, or else I wouldn't be here.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that will be reflected back to you. I can tell you a specific example. I had heard a lot about how Chinese people don't rock with Black people, da 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 da. We went to Macau, which is off the coast of Hong Kong. So Macau is known now for gambling. It's like known as the Vegas of,
So many casinos, right? Like,
so many casinos. Yeah. And so when we went, the only casino with that was finished, I think, was the Wynn at the time. I mean, there were some Asian casinos, but the Palazzo was still being built.
mhm.
I think there were only like a handful that were complete at the time. And when I say we were the only little chocolate drops, that I saw far and wide, but got treated extremely well everywhere, and I was like I was trying my little bit of Mandarin out. And so the people, whether they were in Macau, whether they were in Taiwan, whether we were in Hong Kong, I never got that. If anything, they're probably curious about you. They're looking,
Yeah.
they might think you're like an entertainer because how many Black people do they see traveling to that corner of the world? So maybe it could be that. Maybe they think you're special. And so, but they were very kind. And I didn't have anyone try to touch my hair. I didn't have anyone trying to, be rude to me. Um, I've been blessed with great experiences thus far.
Yeah, and when we were in Turkey last summer again, um, our guide, she was the best, and she was asking about things about the United States, and we got into a conversation about racism and things in the United States, and how African Americans have been treated historically. And she says, "I don't understand, I don't understand that." And again, every country, every nation, they have their own set of issues and problems and
Sure.
experiences that people native to those lands, experience, and they experience things differently from, immigrants or visitors. But she says, I don't understand. She said, because, African Americans, they created everything. Everything came from them. She said she didn't say African Americans. Let me correct.
Right.
She said Africans, and she said
Mhm.
everybody knows everything came from Africa. She said we know that. She was saying as a person, as a Turkish person, she said
Turkish
we,
person. Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
and maybe it's a little bit more resonant to them because of their proximity to the
Right.
continents.
Right.
Turkey and Greece and the Middle East. I don't know, but she did say that. So, um again, it was refreshing. It's nice to hear that. And like I said, to get that appreciation and that understanding, but she didn't have an understanding of how
The
could
race
be
tensions could be so deep.
right.
I'm telling you, I really, really believe the form of slavery that America has practiced and the form of violence that's associated with that. And I'm, again, not taking anything away from anyone else's treacherous past.
Mhm.
Anyone who's practiced the enslavement and kidnapping of human beings has had a treacherous past. But I think the fact that so much of the violence in America was perpetuated pretty regularly, even up until the present, right? Like
Yeah,
even
beyond slavery,
right beyond slavery,
so
our existence in America is pretty violent, just as Americans, let alone as African Americans.
yeah,
So I think that that is a different lens altogether because here you are. That was the whole reason of the civil rights movement and how we gained quote unquote equality, which we know that's a lie, but how we gained equality was that the world was able to see America was sicking dogs on and putting fire hoses on people, and they were like, whoa, wait, we knew they were racist, but we didn't know that was happening, and it's a difference. You're talking about as late as the 60s and actually in some places into the 70s of out and out violence without any kind of hesitation. And so I think that's different for countries in Europe, whereas they try to put that behind them so much. It wasn't like a regular, you weren't here in big numbers. So they didn't have, you benefit, which is why I wanted to move here. You benefit from the fact that they were a homogenous society. Whereas in the States, we were there by the millions. So they had to figure out how to slow you down, like how to make sure you can't
still,
participate fully
still
in the
to this
system.
day, to this day.
Right, but here in Europe, period, you weren't a huge part of the population, so there was no need to codify your denigration, your oppression to
Except
make it
until recently, like in terms of, African immigrants.
absolutely. And that's when you're seeing the pushback now because people have them same countries have made it very hard to exist in people's native lands. And so you have refugees who are fleeing, and rightfully so, because this is how I feel all the time as someone asking me about, do you feel comfortable? I'm like, I feel comfortable anywhere on the planet because many of these places would not have the wealth they have had they not pillaged the place of my original creation. You know, if you weren't out here pillaging Africa, you wouldn't have these beautiful churches filled with gold and all of these different things and all these stolen artifacts. So if you as a Black person, you should feel comfortable visiting anywhere and everywhere on this planet, quite honestly. And anybody who deserves to walk those streets is you, because you pay the price for a long time of being the subject of extreme violence. This is your time to have ease. And so, you know, it's just one of those things that it's subjective. It's subjective. What I will say also though is that I do see, it's crazy because again, it's a complex conversation. It's really hard sometimes and heartbreaking to be treated better as an American outside of the country of your birth than you are in the country of your birth. That was unsustainable for me. I could no longer do that. After so many of the tragedies that we saw with George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, my soul couldn't handle it. My mental health I could not. I was like almost incapacitated. I couldn't, and I'm active in politics in the States, very active. And I was like, I will never stop, but it was killing me. And so I needed to be able to opt out and do some work from afar. I'm still very actively politically active, but not in the same way. And I feel like being on another side of the planet, being closer to the mother continent, allows me to build coalition differently, which is what I think is the key to freedom.
So was that your primary motivation to moving
My
out of
primary
the US?
My primary motivation was peace, peace of mind, safety, because I've never felt so safe. I walk the streets here at all hours of the night regularly, without a second thought.
Mhm.
Um, of course, I'm a Jersey girl. I'm always aware of my surroundings. But when I say, God forbid, anything happened to me, it would be it's like almost unfathomable that something like that would happen. A woman got robbed in the park here at my park. It's a huge park. And it was like, oh my, she got robbed. Like she didn't get shot or anything like that. She got robbed of her card. So my neighbor was all up in arms. They robbed her. My Portuguese neighbor, I cannot believe it is the country is changing. And I was like, did they hurt her? She's like, no, they took her purse. And I was like, oh,
It's much more of an anomaly, right?
for sure. And I mean, again, not to downplay anybody's experience, but to me, I'm like, if that's the worst I gotta deal with it, then just sign me up because it does something. You're able to, I'm on a very spiritual journey at this point in my life. I'm 48. And so being able to hear myself and be quiet is a space I did not have in the States. Here, I have so much peace that I'm able to be in touch with myself in a whole different way than I was capable of in the States. I think if you're in a place that you're on hyper guard all the time, you don't even know, even from the way we retain weight, especially as women, all of that, it's impacted by your hypersensitivity of always having to be on guard,
Yeah,
whatever the case may
yes.
be.
Stress
When
hormone.
I, yeah, when I got here, weight just fell off of me. You know, I mean, we're not big by nature, but weight fell off of me. And I know it was because I felt comfortable. Number one, I was walking all the time. My food is different here. There's fast food, but people don't eat it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
not a
and
thing.
even the fast food is probably it's fresher, it's less
Yeah, it's
conservative.
different because there's a lot of things that are not allowed to be in your food here,
Mhm.
by regulation that is allowed in the States, which people
Yeah.
need to think about that. That's kind of
It's
insane.
just not even going to be in a supply chain.
No, not at all, not at all. So I think it allows you a space of humanity that everybody should experience. I don't, it's hard to explain peace to people who ain't never had it. You think you've had it, but you haven't until you get out of it.
It's like when you need glasses, but you don't know you need glasses. And then you get the glasses and you put the glasses on and you're
Oh,
like,
true.
dang, I'm seeing all of this. And as a person who just recently began wearing glasses, and I always wanted glasses my whole entire life.
You
I,
did.
I
You
was
have.
in first grade, I used to try to fake and pretend like I couldn't see certain things on my eye exams and it never worked.
That's
So I
hilarious.
just recently, within this past year, started wearing glasses and I knew that my vision was changing. So I took an eye exam and it was like, oh, you're I used to always be 2020. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
2040, I think.
Hmm.
40
Hmm.
20. And so I got glasses and I don't have to wear them all the time, but when I wear them specifically driving, I'm like, wow, like this is so clear. This is so
For
vibrant.
sure.
So I think you don't know, you don't miss what you never had.
It's an excellent analogy, Aaliyah. And when people ask me, because people will always say that from back in the States that I know, and they're like, you're just glowing, you're this. And I'm like, my weight of existing is so different here that it's hard for me to properly verbalize that. I can't communicate it to people who haven't had it. And then when I've had multiple friends who've come and stayed for significant time with me, I've gotten 12 people to move here. So who weren't even planning to move here. Because they come and they're like, oh, I see. I got you. I understand it now.
And Portugal is on my list of, not saying I'm going to move from the US, but it's on my list of
Right.
if I had to move, where would I go? And I think, again, considering the current state of affairs in the US, people should always have, and that's just any time in life, maybe not
Plan
even,
A, B, C.
have your passports, people, make sure your kids and,
Leave.
closest to you, your partners, spouses, parents, children, they have their passports, because you just never know. And if you got to go, and you should have an idea of where could you go if you really seriously
Absolutely.
had to relocate. And that brings us to though the finances and making a living. I don't really like that phrase, but
Yeah.
just being able to provide for yourself and your loved ones. What do you do, and then what are the opportunities? How can people support themselves, not just if they move to Portugal, but anywhere, something.
Anywhere.
And we have a global society now, more of a global society, and people can work from anywhere, some people depending on what your
Mhm.
career is. But what's your experience like, and what insights do you have as far as that about making money and supporting?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So I would say this, people are often deterred because they think they need a fortune. And I'm not going to say money will not make your landing easier. That's anywhere. It definitely will make your landing easier. It all depends on what type of visa you're looking for and what country you're looking to immigrate to.
Hmm.
So every country has their own different standards. I'll about my personal visa. So what I came on was a D7, which is a retirement visa. And so, although I'm not fully retired, I don't have a pension, but it's called basically a passive income visa. So, what they want to see is that you have the equivalent of a year's worth of wages, equivalent to the Portuguese minimum wage. And when I came, the Portuguese minimum wage was under 800 euro a month. So, I needed to have not even quite 10,000 euro in the bank at the time for my approval. And they want to see that you have income every month to be able to support yourself, at least at that level. And so I was very intentional about making sure I had more than that because I didn't want them to turn my visa application down. But now you have digital nomad visas. Almost every country is doing that now. The standards are a little bit higher. They want to make sure that you're not a burden. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I want to stress to people, if you think you want to move abroad somewhere, get started now, because I can tell you that what I've been witnessing over the past year, but especially since certain events have happened as of the top of this year,
Hmm.
um, they like we full B.
Right,
these,
right. There's
these
no more room
borders,
at the end.
look, these borders, even if they're not explicitly saying it, I see things that are happening that I won't go fully into. I mean, I have a business, Christy Goes Global and Christy and Coimbra, that I help people relocate, but I can tell you for certain, I am seeing subtle ways of saying we're good. And I think that's multiple factors. I think that what's happening administratively is not doing us any favors here. I definitely notice a change in the tone towards Americans here.
Right.
I have more, I can't even tell you how many Ubers in the past month I've gotten into, and immediately they ask me about this administration and how do I feel? And
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
my perspective on it? Because they want to know, like, are you cool or are you not cool? And
And I mean, and it's like, that's why I think more and more African Americans are looking to the continent, and looking to go home and try to build there. And
Yeah.
that, for many, many years and generations, some people, racist people in the United States have said, go back to Africa. And
Bet.
now there's space there. That's a huge
Right.
continent. There's
And
lots
people
of
should be
space.
looking into that.
We have a place to go, but other places there's not so much land and space. So, people may not be welcome there. The people who have said those very things, go back to this place. Well, there's lots and lots of land there. There's lots of
Yeah.
resources. We actually have a place to go. These other countries, they don't have the space, the bandwidth,
No.
or the desire to have you
No,
come there
and
and
quite
then,
honestly, it's the whole world. I mean, if you look at the whole world's on fire right now, right? There's wars raging all over the world. Then you have climate change. So, I mean, even in America, when you're seeing people become climate refugees because if there's wildfires or or flooding, you're seeing insurance companies, now I'm in my real estate bag. You're seeing insurance companies who are refusing to insure homes that are built in certain areas. So where you can live if you need a mortgage, now if you just independently wealthy and you can buy your house cash and self-insure,
yeah,
you're good. But that's usually not the story for most people. Most people will
yeah,
need to have a mortgage, and in order to have a mortgage, you have to have home insurance. If you have these large insurance companies by and large saying we will not insure you if you live in this state, in this area, the places where you live are getting smaller and smaller, which
right,
is pressure on resources that are already under pressure because of global climate change. So even if people in the states aren't thinking about moving abroad, you're going to have to start thinking about where you can live even within the borders of America because of regulation and lack of being able to be insured in those places. And
yeah,
so I think it's no different than what you're seeing across the world is that people are cognizant. We pay economists, we pay people to look at this agricultural professionals to see what it's going to look like in 5 years if this continues to happen. What is our grain supply? What is our water supply? So you have countries, I think, that are feeling that pressure and saying we can't sustain and support a whole bunch of people. So for me, just like you said, I always have a plan A, B, and C. I love Portugal. I pray to be here for, years to come, but she good be like I have other plans if something goes awry because I do see the informal ways of them saying we need to slow the tide. And that's not going to, you have 8 billion people, whatever it is on the planet. People have to live and they're going to live however they need to.
yeah.
And you have to be thinking about that.
And I know you have to wrap up soon because you're 5 hours
Mhm.
ahead of me and your day is kind of winding down on this beautiful
Yeah.
Sunday. But I have, two more things I wanted to discuss. Um, have you been able to, as an African American person or a person of African descent, have you been
Yeah.
able to build community there in Portugal and how? And then also, do you think you would ever consider moving back to the United States?
If you see me living in the United States, call somebody and rescue me because it would be under freaking duress. I'm telling you right now. The world is vast and large. I'm grateful and proud of being a Jersey girl. I'm thankful for what the US has given me, but I feel like it has taken more than it's given me. And especially for the level of stress, like I'm here to have a full human existence. And I do not feel that's capable for me. I'm not capable of that in the States. If other people love it, I love it for you. But that's not for me. And so, no, if you see me there, call the people because it wasn't by my own free will. So that's that. As far as yeah, as far as and there's many beautiful places in the world to exist. As far as being able to build community, yes, like I said, I have community from other African Americans. We are everywhere. We're here in my city. We're here in Lisbon. We're here in Porto. We're in the Algarve. You can find your community. You just have to be intentional about seeking it out. And that comes from doing your research and making visits. I encourage people if you can. I know it's not as easy for some, but if you can, travel. If you can go blow 2,000 in a weekend in Miami, 2,000, you could actually probably travel to some other places if you plan properly. I would
Yeah,
encourage,
absolutely.
right. I would see it as important in these days and times to
Yeah.
do that.
And I think,
You, like,
traveling,
how many times do you need to go to Miami? Oh,
yeah,
I
and I
mean,
mean, traveling within the US is great as well, just
for
getting
sure.
out beyond, your comfort zone or where you're from. And there's so many beautiful places in the US. Um, it's a beautiful country, but
For
traveling
sure.
abroad gives you a whole other perspective, and that exposure to different cultures, different ways of life, I think is really important. And it can be expensive, but if you plan and budget and save in other areas, it can be doable, for many people.
And that leads me back to a question I don't think I properly answered that you asked a few minutes ago about supporting yourself. I highly encourage people, like you said, I'm an international real estate professional. I've been a licensed real estate broker in the States for over 20 years. I was a licensed general contractor in the States for years before I came here. And that's not something I will give up. I love real estate. But in addition to that, I got certified in cybersecurity. I'm always thinking about how will I support myself, and I'm getting older. Construction was very physical for me. I had some injuries from that, and so it was like, what can I do? I don't have a pension. My child went to one of the most prestigious schools in America. My money was like, see you later. And so
Right.
I don't have the 401k that I used to have, and so I had to really think about another reason for me moving abroad. Where can I live that does not require as much? As an entrepreneur in the States, I was paying sometimes $1,200, $1,300 a month for health insurance. My health insurance here, private, Stellar Insurance. I mean, there's public, which is free, and then you can have private if you want more options and quicker response times to some systems. My private insurance, which is pretty much gold standard, is €160 a month for two people. Like, I
What's
can't.
for everybody that doesn't know, what is the
Oh,
equivalent in US dollars to
so
the
right now, well, with the dollar dropping rapidly, don't even get me started on this, which costs me hell of money every time I have to transfer money. But right now I think it's at for every euro, I mean 86, it costs us like a additional 14% premium at this time. So it cost me a euro, $1.14 just to get a euro. And so, it's made life a little bit more expensive than it has been in the past
so
few years.
160 euros, like what, like
I would
140?
just add, like, typically it's around 10%. So I would add 10% to that. So that would be
Oh,
like a
like
171. Yeah.
$171. I
Yeah,
had
170. Yeah. Yeah, I would just like add 10%. That's usually where we have hovered the past like several years.
Mhm.
At some point we were at parity, but that's not typical. You have to, that's also an expense people have to think about, of converting your money. If you make money in another country, wherever that country may be, and you need currency in your current country, what does that look like? So those are
Yeah.
things to be considered.
So
So yeah.
yeah. So Christy, I know, our time is coming to a close. How
Mhm.
can people find you? How can people keep up with you if they
I Thank you for asking. So I am on Instagram at Christy Goes Global and Christy in Queenborough. So Queenborough is COIM as in Mary, B like boy, RA as in apple. Christy is CHRISTIE, like Christy Brinkley. So Christy in Queenborough and Christy Goes Global. I am also available via email if someone would like to email me with questions, because I feel like it's our responsibility to pay that forward when people were very helpful to me in my immigrating abroad. And so you can reach me on my personal email at cnicole@mac.com. That's CNICHOLE at M like Mary, A like Apple, C like cat.com. And
All
thank you
right.
so much for this great, great conversation.